Part 41. I will find if there is any way to help Huaifeng. Here Xuan Huaifeng was led by him respectfully, and he walked around the office for most of the time. These government offices are similar, with doors and glass windows, and several desks with lamps and documents on them. The people in the office saw the chiefs when I was in the car. I had already prepared for the inspection of the officer, and everything was tidied up. In this way, no matter who came, I couldn't see the truth for a while. On the other hand, Xuan Huaifeng himself, wearing a set of neat and new military uniforms, was in good spirits, handsome in appearance, tall in body. Wherever he went, as far as his eyes could see, the members bowed their heads and rode hard, as if they had it's a job that can't be done in a lifetime. In fact, outside the door and the window, I don't know how many pairs of eyes squeezed to peek at the celebrity next to the chief. When Xuan Huaifeng passed by, everyone tossed the papers and pens and gathered together to mumble. Rather than saying that he inspected various departments, it would be better to say that he was inspected by various departments. After watching for a long time, Xuan Huaifeng also felt that it was not interesting, so he asked the member who led the way to take him to the adjutant's room. When he arrived at the adjutant's room, he thanked the member and asked him to do his own business. Xuan Huaifeng pushed in the door by himself, only to find that adjutant's son had not returned. I don't know what to talk about with Bai Xuelan about the important business, and it's not over yet. He planned to review some documents while waiting for adjutant's son to return. He went to the table and saw that they were neatly stacked. It was all approved, and probably the ones to be approved had not been sent. As a result, there was nothing he could do. And Xuan Huaifeng didn't want to wait, so he simply left the adjutant's room and went upstairs to find Bai Xuelan according to the route he remembered just now. As soon as he reached the corner of the stairs, a purple shadow suddenly appeared on it. If Xuan Huaifeng had not stepped back quickly, he would have almost collided. That Li Hua was hurriedly rushing down, and looking around again, suddenly saw Xuan Huaifeng, stunned for a moment, without stopping. "Ah, be careful." Xuan Huaifeng suddenly stretched out his hand to support the man. When he saw it, he couldn't help but be surprised. "It's you. This is also half an acquaintance." Li Hua was wearing a half-new purple satin cheongsam, carrying a small handbag with silk and gold handles, smiled at Xuan Huaifeng, and suddenly frowned, revealing a painful expression. Xuan Huaifeng was startled, and asked quickly, "What? Where is the injury?" Li Hua nodded and said softly, "It seems that my foot has been sprained. I don't want to be seen." "Adjutant Xuan, where do you have a convenient place? I'll just sit down and leave." There was a little pleading in her eyes. A woman who was injured and begged like this, no man with grace can ignore it. Xuan Huaifeng had no choice, so he took her to the adjutant's room and let her sit down. Just as he was going to find some medicine for her, Li Hua said, "Don't make such a big noise, lest people not know about it. You see, there is a glass cold water bottle on the office cabinet. Excuse me, bring it here. I will use this water. Just put it on once." Xuan Huaifeng took the cold water bottle. Li Hua wet it with her handkerchief, and put it on her right ankle, which she should use as a cold compress. Xuan Huaifeng watched her take off her high heels, put a snow-white foot on the opposite chair, and turned her eyes to the other side. After a while, she asked curiously, "Why are you here?" Li Hua had already guessed it. When he asked this question, Water Tinkling stared at him for a moment and replied with a smile, "It's another one. I'm sure I won't tell the truth. Just find any reason to prevaricate it. Since it's you who opens it, I have to tell the truth, but there is one thing, I say it, you can't pursue it to the end." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Go ahead. I just ask casually, what can I pursue?" Li Hua pursed her lips and smiled. You don't know, I hurried downstairs just now, and it was you who was hiding. Xuan Huaifeng was even more curious. Why are you hiding from me? Li Hua then whispered, you know, in a place like our Shuyan pavilion, we have to have a group of regular customers to support it so that we can sustain it. As a regular customer, not only will they come to the pavilion, but occasionally they will ask the girls to meet outside. Today, there was an official in your department who called me for a note. Who knew that just after I arrived, you and your general manager arrived, and surprised my guest? This matter needs to be known by the boss. Is he wrong as an official? For this reason, he hurriedly asked me to hide. When you were patrolling just now, I hid behind the cabinet and looked at it. Oh, you are wearing the clothes of an officer, and there is someone leading the way. Who will see you? You don't even dare to look up, but you are so majestic. Eyes full of admiration slid towards Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng felt embarrassed when she said it. Li Hua said, as soon as you leave, I naturally have to leave in a hurry in order not to implicate my guest, so I don't have to sit in vain and let people expose it. I didn't expect to be caught by you on the stairs. It can be seen. People can't be guilty. The more they are afraid of something, the more they bump into something. Although she said this, there was no fear on her face, and she smiled, as if this matter was very interesting. Xuan Huaifeng asked, which department does your guest belong to? Li Hua smiled and put her finger on her lips. Didn't you say you won't be held accountable? Then I was scolded, and I might even lose my official position. Isn't it my fault? Xuan Huaifeng asked. Does this happen often when a member of the ministry calls a girl in the office? Li Hua said, there is an old saying that the world is as black as an old man. Haven't you heard of it? After hearing her say this, Xuan Huaifeng knew that this kind of thing happened often. I sighed in my heart. No matter how the top is 3 times and 5 orders, the bottom is full of yin and yang. Seeing that he didn't say a word, Li Hua secretly looked at his expression. Her heart suddenly felt a little empty, and after thinking for a while, a jade hand lightly pressed on his arm, and said softly, don't be angry, which official is not like this now? Speaking of the Republic of China, I think it's almost the same as when the emperor was there in the past. Even if he was originally a good person, as long as he becomes an official, holds power in his hand, and sees money in his eyes, he will become lustful and evil. The world is like this. Why do you have to be so sullen with unjust life? She paused, her expression suddenly changed, she seemed to remember something, and said, by the way, let me tell you something else. This is a little bit different from you. It has something to do with it. Xuan Huaifeng asked, what's the matter? Li Hua asked, last time you and Chief Pai came to Shuyan Pavilion, there was a girl named Xiao Feiyan who sang Cantonese tunes. Do you still remember her? Xuan Huaifeng immediately remembered and said, why don't you remember? She and I are still fellow villagers. What's wrong with her? Li Hua sighed first. In my opinion, if she came with you that day, even if she was a girl who brought tea and water, she would be blessed. It's a pity that you are so handsome and insistent that you refuse to ask for it. Her godfather, the boss, just happened to ask someone for something, so he handed her over to a regiment leader named Zhang. How could there be such a thing? Xuan Huaifeng eats startled. Oops, didn't I hurt her? Did the regiment commander treat her very badly? Li Hua said, alas, a rude person, who can only lead soldiers, got a beautiful teenage girl. How could you not like it, child? It was good that the head of the regiment began to treat her. But his family has been with him all year round, and now he is in the city, so things will be bad. The head of the regiment doesn't want to see her. As soon as he showed that he liked her, the head's wife was naturally unhappy. Xuan Huaifeng asked, "Can the head of the regiment control his wife?" Li Hua snorted. The family is the original wife, and she was married to the Ming media in her hometown. She served her parents-in-law for many years. And she and her husband endured hardships together. They gave birth to 2 sons. Xiao Feiyan, who is halfway through the door, is far superior. Although the head of the regiment is a rough man, he is helpless against his filthy wife. First, he has been new to Xiao Feiyan, and he is often outside. There are more fresh games, and secondly, the wife at home has been arguing a few times over Xiao Feiyan, so he was upset, so he simply handed Xiao Feiyan over to his wife, and let go of his hands and just had a good time outside. Therefore, the wife even took out her anger on Xiao Feiyan. She was a concubine. In fact, she only treated her as a 3rd or 4th rank girl. If she was punished for kneeling under the big sun, she would have eaten every meal. Xuan Huaifeng heard this, unavoidable guilt and remorse, and couldn't help but ask, "But how do you know about other people's affairs?" Li Hua said, "I didn't know it at first. It was just a few days ago that a little girl was sent to the pavilion, crying and begging. After a closer look, I knew it was her. I was also busy. So I walked over and asked. She told me these things while crying. It turned out that the regiment commander's wife still couldn't tolerate her, saying that she stole the money and wanted to sell her to Shuyan Pavilion. She is so young and beautiful, and she has learned to play and sing. My mother really wanted to take it. But before I paid the money, the head of the regiment came back and said they would take her back. Probably thinking about selling a concubine into the brothel, her reputation was not good. So I changed it temporarily. Alas, if it were me, I would rather sell it at least to have food and clothing. Who is not raised by a biological parent? I see how pitiful she is with such a tiny bit of bone on her small arm. Adjutant Xuan, you are a powerful person, can you help her? As the saying goes, saving a life is better than building a 7-level pagoda. Looking at Xuan Huaifeng with anticipation. Needless to say, Xuan Huaifeng also felt righteous indignation. But things cannot be done without a head. He pondered for a while, then frowned and said, "If it is possible to redeem her with money, that's fine. I'll just raise the money. However, she is someone's concubine now. Even if we are willing to spend money, someone may not be willing to let us redeem her. If you want to clear things up, you must first pass her husband's test." Have you asked Xiao Feiyan what the full name of the regiment commander is? Where did he bring the soldiers? Where is the office? Li Hua smiled and said, "We just met so suddenly. How could we ask so many questions? But she told me that the head of the group and she came from the same hometown, and she often praised her for singing Cantonese opera well. Okay, so I think that the regiment leader is probably from Guangdong. By the way, there are a lot of military uncles from Guangdong in the city recently, and other places are not counted. We, Shuyan Pavilion, are talking about Guangdong almost every night. The guest with the eloquence, dressed in military uniforms and led the guards, is fierce. However, he is very generous. I don't know if the Captain Zhang of Xiao Feiyan is also from that group." Xuan Huaifeng heard that he was from Guangdong. "I had long thought of the group of people I met yesterday. If so, you can ask the 3rd brother to inquire." Thinking of this, Xuan Huaifeng said to Li Hua, "Don't worry, I have a responsibility for this matter, and I won't stand by. Let me inquire about the news first, and when it is confirmed, I will see if there is any way to help her." Li Hua was also very happy and said, "If that's the case, I might be able to help out and do a good thing." At this time, the pain on her ankle was also reduced a lot, and she said she would go back to Shuyan Pavilion. Xuan Huaifeng asked, Would you like me to call a car to take you back? Li Hua waved her hands hurriedly. Don't forget. I'm a person who shouldn't be in the office now. Call a car. Why not let everyone get it? No. You just let me go out quietly, hire a rickshaw, and leave without a sound. Xuan Huaifeng became an accomplice to cover for no reason, and he himself felt amused. I had no choice but to drag Li Hua to the door and open the door for her. Li Hua wrote a small note, glanced at him affectionately, and whispered, if you rescue Xiao Feiyan, give me a letter of approval, so that I will be happy for her too. Shuyan Pavilion also has a phone number, the number is written here. Don't throw it away. Stuffing the note in Xuan Huaifeng's upper pocket, she bit her lower lip and smiled. Only then did she step out of the door of the adjutant's room, leaning on the wall and walking slowly. After Xuan Huaifeng let Li Hua go, he thought for a moment in the adjutant's room. The last time I saw the third brother, Xuan Huaifeng wrote him the number of the White Mansion. But he left too quickly and didn't remember to ask the third brother for a phone number. If I knew earlier, I should have had a way to get in touch. It's all right now. I have to find the third brother for something, but I can't at the moment. However, since Li Hua said that there are a lot of Guangdong soldiers in the city recently, it is estimated that it will not be too difficult to find. Xuan Huaiyan is now also the adjutant of the army commander, so he should be able to ask if he asks. If adjutant's son is free, I can ask him for this. Thinking of this, Xuan Huaifeng simply left the adjutant's office and went upstairs to the chief's office. Raising his hand, he knocked on the door twice, and the door slammed open from the inside. Bai Xuelan was standing in front of the door, holding his arm and taking him into the office, asking, "Where did you go? It took so long. If I don't come back, I'll have to find someone myself." Xuan Huaifeng said, "I was waiting for adjutant's son in the adjutant's room, but he never came down. He now can only be silent for a while." Bai Xuelan asked Xuan Huaifeng to sit on his chair and brought him a half-warm cup of tea. "Drink some." Not wanting to show his kindness, he lowered his head and took a sip. Bai Xuelan smiled and watched him drink tea. He raised his hand and stroked the short strands of black hair along his forehead, while asking, "Have you seen it everywhere? Did you see anything interesting?" Xuan Huaifeng, just when he wanted to open his mouth to talk about Xiao Feiyan, he suddenly thought of this person's earth-shattering jealousy. To talk about Xiao Feiyan, we must first explain the encounter with Li Hua. If the encounter is explained, I am afraid that the part where the two of them are alone in the adjutant's office will not be without explanation. Such a series of explanations may be nothing to others, but in Bai Xuelan, I don't know how many strange suspicions can arise. The more Xuan Huaifeng thought about it, the more he felt that it was inappropriate to open his mouth. So, he said perfunctorily, "It's almost the same, I can't see anything for a while." After a while, he said, "However, to prevent problems before they happen, I think there are some rules in each department. I still have to reiterate that what can and cannot be done in the office must be explained clearly. In case some people go to the office, they are always busy doing some private affairs." Bai Xuelan smiled charmingly and asked, "You guessed it. In my heart. Do you know that I plan to do some private affairs with you in this office?" Xuan Huaifeng unexpectedly said such a slander, and he was caught off guard, and his ears were red. Bai Xuelan leaned over, half sitting on the desk, looking down at him. "Don't be afraid, you can guess my heart, and I can guess yours too. This is really a match made in heaven." Xuan Huaifeng was so frivolous by him that he couldn't bear it all the time, and asked defiantly, "What do you think about me? What do I have in mind for you to guess?" Bai Xuelan said, "You think in your heart that we should. if you do personal affairs after dinner, if you do it now, it's neither the occasion nor the time. Right? With a funny low laugh. Of course, Xuan Huaifeng understood what those private matters after dinner were. It turned out that Bai Xuelan never forgot. It was like waiting for the clock to come. After really waiting for dinner, I still don't know how this person will get up. The more I thought about it, the more hot and itchy gas came up in my neck. He shrank his neck abruptly, and it turned out that Bai Xuelan put his hands behind him and was scratching the base of his neck like a cat. Xuan Huaifeng slapped his unruly hand and glared at him. Don't make trouble, you are still the chief, you are in the office, and you don't know the 4 words of setting an example. It turns out that your subordinates are all learning. I have followed your example. Bai Xuelan hummed proudly. Someone can learn from my example, that's a blessing for the country. Xuan Huaifeng said, stop bragging about yourself. And do something more serious. By the way, when will the documents to be approved today be delivered? I should do the things I have to do first. As he was talking, the phone on the desk rang. Bai Xuelan sat at the table half by half, stretched out his long arms, grabbed the microphone swiftly, and gave an old-fashioned hello. Seeing that he was on business, Xuan Huaifeng quickly stood up, vacated the chair for him, and looked at the teacup again. Before he knew it, he had run out of drink. So he simply went to the door to find a thermos and a tea jar from the public house, make another cup. Returning to the office with a glass that was half full, he pushed open the door and raised his head to glance inadvertently. A cold electric light and flint flashed across Bai Xuelan's face. The chill was piercing to the bone, and it made the back of my spine shiver. But only a glimpse. In the blink of an eye, it all disappeared. Xuan Huaifeng was secretly surprised. Put the cup on the table, and asked him, what's wrong? Bai Xuelan hung the microphone back where it was, and said lightly, no big deal. He picked up Xuan Huaifeng's freshly made tea, lowered his head and blew, took a sip along the edge of the cup, and sneered through gritted teeth. I don't know what to think about.